This episode is proudly supported by Pepe Sayer Australian Cultured Butter.
The Pepe Sayer all new Australian butter sheets. Everything we've learned over the last 12 years, we've put into making this new butter sheet. Combined with a brand spanking new shiny machine from Switzerland, we're able now to produce this beautiful butter sheet that's so easy to laminate with. So it's pliable, it's very fresh. If you're an Australian baker buying our butter sheets, they're made weekly. The formulation, it's a beautiful unsalted butter that will work for savoury and sweet. I think it's a perfect balance there. The bakers and pastry chefs that are using it are just raving about it.
For more information, go to pepesayer.com.au.
How can we help those in our business open their own? So we really hope that these places become somewhere where the next restaurant owners of Sydney come into, and we help them, in whichever way that we can.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Surry Hills in Sydney is renowned as a dining destination. Throughout its history, it's played host to some of Australia's very best establishments. What's it like creating successful restaurants in a suburb of such notoriety and then creating something deep in suburban Sydney? Is the model different? Bec Fanning is the co-owner of Arthur and Jane restaurants in Surry Hills and Fior restaurant in Gymea. Bec, how are you?
I am good. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to get you on the show. You and your partner, Tristan, have been incredibly busy in the last couple of years. You've got 3 venues now. How are things going?
Yeah, good. I think the last year has been a bit of a learning curve, which is always good. I think both Tristan and I are the sort of people that constantly need a bit of a challenge. So coming from Jane and Arthur and Surry Hills, who were quite established by the time we opened up Fior, it's been an interesting but very challenging year, which is good.
I'm interested to see what the difference is in sort of opening in, Surry Hills is kind of a dining destination, I guess, for Sydney, and Gymea is a very suburban suburb and in the south of Sydney. How different are the clientele and the restaurants?
Oh, God, they couldn't be any more different. I feel like Tristan and I talk about it all the time because I guess the one thing that we always want is just to create really great spaces that people enjoy coming to. And I feel like with Jane and Arthur, it was very much built for the people of the area, and we were the people of the area as well. So we had been behind, actually, we lived behind Arthur for I think 2 or 3 years before we actually opened. So Tristan was literally 30 seconds away from home. And we were in our early 30s at that point. So going out a lot, understanding the market and all this sort of stuff. So opening Arthur, I felt was just like the natural progression. And Tristan's always had this idea that he would always own restaurants, and me with my background, it just made sense when we got together, and that happened really easily, and I felt like Tristan really led that charge. And then Jane opened again. That it always takes a bit of tweaking with all of our venues. I think because it's only us, we feel like it takes a little bit of time to get everything completely right. And there is a time with all 3 of our restaurants where there was a bit of a catalyst for the next stage. And I think that's kind of what we're going through now. The past year has been just constantly learning what the market wants. Tristan's from there. He actually grew up in Gymea. He did his apprenticeship at I think it's Alley Break in Cronulla, which is now next door. So look, he is from there and he very much knows that market and all of that. However, because we had been out of it for a while, I think it's just been really getting to know that area, what they like, and it's just very different to the city because they have a more limited selection of restaurants. They're a lot more price conscious. They probably go out for more special occasions. So there is a bit more pressure on the restaurant to deliver every single time. But our staff are really great at that. And I think over the year, we've really created a really strong team and front of house, like what they do and how they handle things, I personally could not do it myself. But they're really great at what they do because a lot of them are from the area, so they know what to expect and how to handle it.
How much has it impacted your day-to-day? Jane and Arthur are very close to each other, walking distance, and then adding a restaurant that's so far away. Has it changed sort of the management and operational structure for you?
It has a little bit. We're probably stretched across all three. We actually live near Sans Souci, so for us, that's smack bang in the middle of all of our restaurants. But in terms of where our time is split, again, because it's just Tristan and I, we did hire a group operations manager, and she's been key in helping us maintain a set of standards when Tristan isn't there, because Tristan is really kitchen and operations based. And then Jess, our operations manager, really helps out with front of house and keeping those focuses in line, because I just don't think we could do it without an extra set of hands. So yeah, the growth in terms of a head office needed to happen in order to, I guess, keep the standards and not be stretched too thin, because I don't do front of house. I don't do kitchen. I'm more marketing, PR, every licensing, anything else. But yeah, it's all about Tristan kind of setting up his weeks in advance and making sure that he can be at every venue. Because if you're outside of the venues for an extended period of time, I think too many little things can go wrong. And he and we both have quite high standards, which we expect of all of our staff. And if you're not there to pick up on the small things, they kind of snowball a little bit.
I can still remember when Arthur first opened. I was a restaurant critic back then. I still remember the meal quite well. But that seems like so long ago now. How different is it for you, being a single operator then with one restaurant, having three now, and the climate has changed so much? Is the industry a little bit different for you?
Yeah, I mean, when we started Arthur, I was actually working full-time as well. So I was the senior marketing manager at Watson's Bay Hotel, and we could open Arthur. I could do all of everything that I needed to do while still holding a full-time job. And I think once COVID hit, so COVID was kind of not a blessing in any way, but it was definitely a time when I was pregnant, and I got stood down from Watson's Bay Hotel, as the whole of Sydney did. I think it was late March, actually probably coming up to the 5 years very soon. And I was, I think, 28 weeks pregnant at that time. And fast forward a few weeks, and we were in the midst of COVID, and I actually gave birth 8 weeks early. So look, it all worked out at that point, but it's very different to what it is now. I'm in the business 5 days a week. We've got another kid, so we've got 3 businesses, and I think just going through the last 5 years has just taught us that nothing is certain. You've got to always plan for the worst case scenario. As an operator, that everything relies on us. So this is our blood, sweat, and tears. Everything goes into this. We know that we've always got to have our own backing in order to make sure that these businesses survive and be really ahead of everything that's happening. Otherwise, one small thing can really easily take you down.
You mentioned Watson's Bay Hotel and your role there when Arthur first opened. I want to go back to sort of your career before the whole world of the restaurants that you guys own now. But whereabouts did you grow up, and what sort of role did food play for you?
I feel like food for me has always been quite classic Australian. I don't feel like there was any pivotal moment that food was this big thing which kind of changed my life. I feel like it was my mum, funnily enough, has been a chef, and during my childhood that was just so normal that she was a cook, and not a trained chef, but she was always that person that was forever in kitchens. They actually at one point owned the Belrose Hotel, I think it was back then. And I remember my weekends were spent at the hotel. They had a double-decker bus out the back that kids played in. They would be doing kids' parties, and people would dress up as, I think it was Bindi Bear or something like that. So like that's where our weekends were spent, and kind of hadn't really made that connection about the kind of hospo is kind of in our blood as such. And it's probably why I enjoy it so much, because my mum absolutely loves hospitality. She loves service-based industry things where, like, she's now a bus driver. And I think that sense of providing an experience and wanting it to always be the best, I would say probably comes from her. But in terms of, food at home, it was always just the classic Australian dishes, meat and three veg. You've got your apricot chicken, and when in the early, the early 2000s, when, Thai restaurants, Japanese, Mexican, like, you started to explore them. That was very much our family. We'd go out for dinner once a week, and we would go to a different restaurant because our parents wanted us to try different cuisines and that sort of thing. But it was always very, I don't know, it didn't seem to play a big part. And I don't think food in its current form for me really came into effect probably until I was like early 20s, and I was running a pizza restaurant. It was actually the one Crust in Lane Cove. And I feel like that's when I was introduced to all these randomly different ingredients. Like, maybe most people have grown up with that, but I just hadn't grown up with such a varied look at kind of what you could eat. So even things like prosciutto, bocconcini, all those things as like an early 20-year-old, I probably just didn't have that landscape of food prior to that. So I think that was an eye-opener, especially running that when I was 21, 22 or something like that at the time. $40,000, and I'm really not sure why, like, how they trusted me with that, but they did.
How did you even get in that role?
I think I just got a casual job at the one in Neutral Bay. I lived close to there. Did, just back of house, answering phones, taking orders, that sort of thing. And then they opened, I think, a few more or one more in Lane Cove. And I think I guess we have it as well. We have some staff who are early 20s who you can just tell they want more responsibility, and they are a little bit more mature. And I think that's kind of what it was. And I just always wanted more responsibility, or could take it on, and they could see that my brain probably didn't work the same as a normal 21-year-old. Like, albeit I still like to go out and party and would probably still come to work a little bit drunk sometimes. However, I don't know, I always put, the business first, and I always put them first. And it was always those people that were owning the business were who I was working for. And I feel like that's probably what set me up as my love of food. And just a little bit of a different introduction. But when Tristan and I got together, that was at Farmhouse in King's Cross. So he, I think, opened that in 2012. I met him in 2013. I was a casual waitress there. My friend introduced me to Mike, who now owns it. They were looking for, just some part-timers to work, and I was saving up to go away, working 2 jobs again. And yeah, so we met there. And then I feel like his love of food and restaurants and just everything that he knew about the industry really rubbed off on me, and it kind of just started something that I just knew I wanted to get into hospitality marketing. And from there, we went away to Canada for what we thought would be a extended period of time, maybe up to 2 years. Turned out to be 4 months. It was the worst ski season they've had in Canada, probably in 30 years. And Tristan's promising me this huge, giant snow, meters and meters. I learned to snowboard, and I was learning on sheets of ice, and it just, they closed the hill, and we were like, we're done. Tristan actually got offered the job at Dead Ringer, and that's where he became the head chef. And we came back, and I was just like, I'm going to get into hospitality marketing. And that's probably where it all started.
Well, PR and marketing is so important for any venue these days. Tell us about your career in that, and what sort of led you down that path.
Well, I started at the Grounds, was probably my first hospitality marketing role. I can't remember the job title, but it was, I still remember the interview to date. And Ramsey, great guy. I think I remember the interview, and it was just like, we'd finished up and he's like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I guess we'll see how good you are. Like, it was just a kind of probably a flippant comment to him, and he might not actually remember it, but I remember it so well because it was a drive in me to kind of prove him, not in a sense wrong, but that I could do the role. And I think that was just such an eye-opener, because when you have the demand already, you can really do whatever you want. And I think they just created something so extraordinary. And even that was their third or fourth year of operating at that point. And it was really great to be a part of something where they were really focusing on individual elements and really trying to make the best experience possible for their guests. Everything they do is for their guests, and to try and create this really unique experience that you just won't get anywhere else in the world. So we were able to do some really great events. I got a hand in every piece of the pie. It was like events, social media, and their social media was huge at that point. I guess still is. But we got to, have a helping hand in that and see, I guess Ramsay, you could say, is probably one of the creative minds of Sydney's restaurant scene. So he's got a really unique way of thinking. He loves to learn, and it was great to be underneath that because he would take those people in his team on that journey with him. So it was being part of a close-knit team, and I think that was there for about a year and a half, and you learn all about, that was the fundamentals of being in marketing and hospitality. I look back on that time as a really interesting and fun time. They had some really great people working there, and just how to do business, not only from a business owner's perspective, but also I met some people who, just the general managers and all that, who wandered through the times that I was there. But they just gave some really insightful knowledge that if you wanted to learn, you could. If you didn't want to, you could just do your job and get out of there. But you could really immerse yourself. And I guess what you would say today is that kind of became your personality at that time. And I remember things like the grounds do their huge Easter thing, and you're all in there cutting up the chocolate, handing it out to people. Like, it's such a wild ride that you really give your whole life to. And I'm so glad I got to do that when I didn't have kids or any other outside, I guess, pressure, that you could give your whole self over to a job.
You mentioned the Watsons Bay Hotel, one of the busiest, most visited venues in Sydney. What was that period of time like for you?
That was a little bit more chaotic. I had a really great time. I think I met some really great people who I will be friends with forever. There was, again, they have the demand, and so you could really do whatever you wanted and have fun with it. I guess it introduced me to creating these bigger style events. So we would do a New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, huge budgets. You're in charge of $500,000 worth of marketing spend per year. It was a great introduction to be able to get, again, my hands in different areas of the business and learn from really knowledgeable people, because it was Watsons Bay, I think, turnover's huge. They have hundreds of staff. It's just such a beast of a business. And while there are definitely areas of the business which need, work, it might be, you might have a quiet Monday to Thursday or something like that. And you've got to figure out how to fix those holes and get people in. You still had the whole year of a marketing calendar to play with and do events like a Rosé Street Festival, which was just all about rosé. You just took over the local streets, and it was all very fun and interesting because I had not done that sort of stuff before. So it was again a learning curve, but like a really great challenge that I had really great people working with me on.
Tell us about the beginnings of Arthur, when you decided, okay, this is what we're going to do, and you got the site. What was that period of time like, sort of creating and building your own restaurant?
Oh, it feels so long ago now. Coming into our 7th year now, so I feel like Arthur's just this little restaurant it just has had a few iterations. But in the beginning, it was always, Tristan had come from Farmhouse, which is a set menu restaurant. So he always knew that model was what we wanted to do. We'd actually looked at Arthur, the site, I think 6 months before we got it. it was a different agent on it. I think they wanted to sell the business from memory, and we were just like, we're not looking to buy a business, we're just looking for a site. We'd been looking for quite a while. And then we kind of came back to it, and we met the landlords in person. They had just, their previous tenants had just moved out, and we were like, we're looking. And to our landlords, it was really important that we get along with them, that we were, I guess, nice people, that they could trust us. We're quite lucky in all of our relationships with our landlords that it is a very personal relationship to us. We do get along very well with them, and we have had deals over the years where we've backed out of premises or whatever it might be, purely based on the people that we could be working with. So when we met our landlords, it was just meant to be. Everything kind of slotted into place. We're big believers in don't try and push shit up a hill. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. Like, you shouldn't be moving mountains to do something because you know something's going to happen. And that has definitely served us well in quite a few instances, even recently, when we've not taken on something because it's just, too much effort, and something might fall out of place, and we've, got to plug a hole for a little bit. And it's just, when you just got to learn that early. And I felt like with Arthur, literally everything just fell into place, and we'd, moved a few things around. It was all our own investment. I don't think you could do what Tristan did back then. Now, I think to get into a restaurant these days, it is a lot more money, which is kind of what we felt as well in the 2 restaurants that followed. We got in for, $250,000 versus now, I don't know if you could find a restaurant in Sydney that could really, you could do that. You might be able to take over a restaurant. But in order to create one from a shell, I think Tristan did really well with that. And I think that's where he definitely shines. But creating Arthur the brand, I had done brands before, and we knew what we wanted. We wanted it to be classic. We wanted it to be, like you're coming into our house to have a little bit of a dinner party, and the chefs are all on show, and the chefs will come out to the table and explain things to you. And it's just a really personable space that I think people really responded to, and still to this day do. They really enjoy that unique vibe that only, I think, single operators can do in a small space. I think there's a certain vibe that you can't manufacture, and that's something that I know Tristan does really well, and I think that's why the restaurants that we have do so well.
A lot of operators find it hard to make the step from 1 venue to 2 venues. When did you know you were ready, and what was it like creating Jane?
Oh God, Tristan is always ready for the next venue. I make a joke about it every time after we open Jane. I'm like, okay, we've got to give it 6 months. Let's not talk about a venue. But he's just got so many ideas, and I know, and they're all really great ideas. So I don't think there's ever a thought that we wouldn't open a second one. It's just like, when is the right location for us? And I guess we've explored multiple different styles of locations. So there's a new Wonderlick Lane. We were looking at those when they were being offered out and all of that. And to us, it's too much of an investment for us, especially at the time. It was just not something that we could commit to, not something that we had the funds for. We were like, and then we kind of just honed in on our niche of, we really love old buildings with a bit of character, a little bit smaller. And when Jane came up, so that was previously Umi Burger. He'd been there for 9 years, and our landlords are friends with them, the landlords at 478. And I think it all just really organically happened. Everything fell into place. And then we actually took over the lease in the second COVID lockdown, with big hopes of kind of everyone coming out of COVID, wanting really great dining spaces, being sick of being locked up and all of that. So what did we come out? I think we came out of lockdown in middle to end of October in 2021, and we opened in December of 2021. And it honestly, it just felt like everything fell into place. And Jane was this beautiful space that kind of complemented Arthur. We didn't want to compete. We're at, 250 meters away from each other. So we always knew that it had to be something different. And again, that's been something that we've refined over the years, and it's just exploded into this thing that has this factor which everybody loves, which we love as well. And we're just so glad that people can see how amazing that is.
Just give us a bit of a snapshot of both of those venues and sort of how different they are.
So Arthur is a 26-seater set menu, Wednesday to Sunday venue, really innovative ways of cooking Australian cuisine. So it's not modern Australian. Don't love that term for what they're doing here. It is trying to explore what is Australian cuisine. You've got very minimal venues in Sydney which do Australian or try to explore what that is. And I think the guys here are forever exploring that. So we've had multiple chefs come in, head chefs that come in, and through the years has had its iterations. So Arthur started out, I think I want to say $90 set menu. And then where we've moved up just according to, we use better produce, we have more chefs, we've really invested in the building itself. So Arthur's evolved over time, but the one key mission is always to be a little bit better every single day. And you can see that in everything that they do and how we respond to feedback. And the team is just on board with creating this really exceptional experience that just is pure Australian. So everything is Australian wine, Australian food, Australian producers, all this sort of stuff. And it all comes into creating, and it's every head chef's unique interpretation of what Australian cuisine is. And they work quite closely with Tristan. So yeah, it's what we know now is a very unique offering. We get it all the time, especially travelers. We get a lot recently who come on their last night in Sydney, and it's just the epitome of what they finish in Sydney on. So it's a really great thing for tourists, but locals love it because it really is their neighborhood restaurant. We know so many locals, they come once a month, have since we've opened, so, and they've also seen the progression over time, which is really nice to hear from them that our goal is being achieved of, being a little bit better every day, because every time they come in, they say, oh, you're just getting better and better. And that's all that we can hope for. But with Jane, that's a restaurant and wine bar, explores Australian cuisine through a very different lens. It's using different techniques from all over the world. So, for example, we have lamb and saltbush dumplings. We've got salt and pepper whitebait on. They've got croquettes, but using wild rabbit. And, there's no limitations at Jane for what you can do. And I think that's what brings out the beauty and the flavors. We've been really lucky at both venues to have some really creative and talented chefs come through who just, I think without them collaborating with Tristan, the venues just wouldn't be what they are. And I think Beth at Jane has just taken it to a very unique level that we didn't even know was possible. And I think the food to us at both venues is really important, and service definitely plays a part. However, we know, and it's actually a value proposition that we have as a business for the chefs that come in, is you get not your standard 10% of tips. That's not what we see as you are more beneficial to a business than your 10%. We try and, as a small business, we can't offer as much as, say, the groups can. So again, we put an emphasis on the food, and people do come in for the food. They're not just coming in for the service. They are coming in for the food. And I think that's what has made both Jane and Arthur excel, and Jane and Arthur, I think both will be around for a very long time.
You mentioned when you first opened, Arthur, that you were still working full-time at Watson's Bay Hotel. When you sort of made the decision to just work on the restaurants and with Tristan, was that a hard decision and a hard period of time to make that adjustment?
Well, I guess, because I had the time in the first COVID lockdown, and we always thought that I would probably go back to working. However, I think it just became quite evident that there's a lot of work to do on a business that you probably just don't even realize when you're first starting up. It was such a big learning curve from you've got to do, like, who even knew what BAS was when I first started? Like, there's little things that are just so normal now that in the beginning I had no idea what I was doing. So there was a lot of learnings, and then you realizing, oh, I've got enough for 3 or 4 days worth of work. And then once you open a second venue, it's like, okay, now I've definitely got enough for 4 days worth of work. And I guess the value that I could bring from a salary in a full-time job, I could do that in my own job. So I was doing exactly what I would do for the businesses somewhere else. So ultimately we were like, why would I give that to someone else for such a small amount of money when I could put that into our own businesses and, tenfold it, and that could be something that the business reaps rewards from versus someone else's business. And I think that was probably the catalyst to moving into here full time.
How much has PR and marketing changed in your time? We've seen the prevalence of social media take over everywhere, and also the sort of buying power of big groups versus sort of smaller independents like yourself. How do you approach it and get the best out of for the business and for you guys?
PR is like something that we find as a bit of a necessary evil. Evil probably isn't the right word, but I know that a lot of people find it as a pay-to-play space, and unfortunately it is. And as a business, we've just gone, okay, there are certain things that we have to do in order to get airtime and to get ahead of, some of the other bigger groups who would have the money to put on this. So we've just managed to, I guess, maybe what other businesses might not spend money on, or just, take that money and use it, put it profit. I don't know what they're going to use it for, but we made an effort early on to go, we would work with an agency purely based on the fact that they're the ones that have the relationships. I totally understand that, or as you would know, you guys are reached out to all the time. You have all these people opening, you have all these things happening in Sydney, and especially over the past few years, it's like the dining scene has exploded. So for us, we need someone that can hold the relationship for us and speak on our behalf. So I think we've had 2 or 3 PR agencies at this point, and it's mainly just on depending on where we are at that point in time and what they can offer us. But we've always made an effort to make sure that if we do have an opening, for us, we don't have the luxury of time when it's all your own money and your technically house is on the line for it. You want to make sure that you're busy from day one. And I think you can get busy, and we've seen it. You have restaurants all the time that you might not put the money into PR, and they do get busy over time, but we just had everything on the line. So we want to be busy from day one. We back our product, and we know that these people are going to be able to help us. So we've really enjoyed working with PR agencies. I think it's helped us amplify the businesses and get them to where they are today. I think you obviously need to choose your PR agencies well. And I've always been told that your PR agency is going to only ever be as good as what you're willing to push them. So you really do need to work quite closely with them to make sure that they understand the business objectives, what they're filling, and how you're going to get there.
You've had a real amazing organic growth and success of your businesses. For those out there that would be looking to move from one to multiple venues, what sort of advice would you have?
Oh, that's a hard one. Multiple businesses. It's what we found is going from 2 was something that we could handle. 3 is that middle ground. And we really understand now how businesses go from, they get to a 3rd restaurant or a 4th restaurant, and they really catapult themselves, and they probably open their 5th, 6th, 7th quite quickly. We found that there's a lot more tax that comes with a 3rd business. As soon as you go over your $1.2 million in staff wages, you start to pay payroll tax. And there's certain elements that come in that the more restaurants you have. And so the 3rd one for us is, looking back on it, we'd probably say you can either go 2 ways. Fior was very much for us a bigger space. It was, I think, 3 times the size of Jane. So we really went out on a limb, but there is very limited spaces in the Shire. So you can either go down that route or you can stick with what you know and do the same thing. But obviously, I would say stay in a market which you know. And yeah, oh God, that's a really hard one thinking back on it, because it's just been such a crazy year.
Well, it's fascinating that you're talking about the challenges of once you get to a certain size, and that Tristan is always looking for something to do something new and has many ideas. Do you have plans to do more in the next couple of years, or does it make it challenging with those extra costs as you get bigger?
Yeah, I think we would love to open some more. I think for us right now, Fior is our number one priority, and one moment. Fior's our number one priority, to make sure that that's operating well, turning a profit, getting us into a financial stability with that restaurant. Then after that, and anything's game, honestly. Like we already had a space that we were looking at last year. As I said, it was basically pushing shit up a hill, and we just decided it was too hard. And then came into this year, and we've had a few movements, and Tristan has to jump back into the business. So everything works out for us. But there's always a time which will come, and we will open another business, or we're hoping to do a few more things with Jane and get that into maybe a little bit of a different space, kind of leverage off what Jane is and the brand that people know and love, to create a new revenue stream maybe this year.
Wow, that sounds very exciting.
Yeah, so I don't want to say too much just in case it doesn't happen. But yeah, we're hoping to explore something different, because restaurants are really, they take a lot of investment, and especially in 2025, 2026, it's a lot to get into a business. And we work very hard, and it's our whole lives. And we're just like, how can we look at, I guess it's that whole diversification, right? Just trying to figure out a new way of earning revenue where maybe you don't have to put your body on the line for it.
Well, it's amazing what you guys are gifting Sydney with, such diverse sort of offerings and real connection with the community. What do you love about what you do?
Everything. I love the challenges, the learning about every little aspect. I love teaching all the people in our businesses who want to open their own business. I think that's a really big one for us, is how can we help those in our business either open their own, or whichever way they need to get there. I think a lot of people come through to us because you can have a lot more impact in a smaller space than maybe what you would have at a bigger restaurant. So we really hope that these places become somewhere where the next restaurant owners of Sydney come into, and we help them, in whichever way that we can. That's probably one of the areas that we love the most. But honestly, the day-to-day challenges of it not being the same thing every single day. I don't think a 9-to-5 job in an office is for either of us. So I think it's the constant challenges. Like, even when going through COVID, it's amazing how you could probably just have gone absolutely quiet and not known what to do. But within 24 hours of hearing that Sydney was in lockdown, we had already launched our takeaway menu, and I would probably say was one of the most successful takeaway offerings in Sydney from all reports. Yeah. We were, some days we were pairing up to 250 meals.
Wow.
Yeah, like our duck lasagna went, people absolutely loved it. Who knew duck lasagna? But people still reminisce on those days of, oh yeah, we used to come into Arthur and grab the takeaway, and it just, for us, life continued on as normal to a certain degree with a, 8-week preemie baby and going in and out of hospital. But life outside of that really continued on, because we employed all of our full-time staff throughout both lockdowns all the way through. We changed to takeaway. Like, it really is Tristan and I to a T in terms of, adversity is you look at it, and I'm a bit of a worrier, so he kind of brings me back in line, and then we just like go full steam ahead and think, okay, whatever it is, we can tackle it and we'll just get out the other side. And I think COVID really helped cement that for us, that really you can do anything. You've just got to keep going.
Well, you're an absolute inspiration, and what a joy to have you on Deep in the Weeds finally after all these years. Please keep in touch, and we'll have to catch up again soon.
Thank you for having me.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.